Well, 53% of the people of Wales voted to leave the EU. That included leaving the single market. That included leaving the customs union.
Well, did it?
Well, it did, because
I don't remember anybody.
Of course it was. They're integral parts of the European Union.
Well, I remember Brexiters saying in the campaign, we can be like Norway. Now, that means, of course, having access to the single market. There are countries that are not in the EU but are in the customs union. Jersey and Guernsey, Isle of Man are examples of that. Now, you don't have to leave the customs union or the single market if you're going to leave the EU. You can leave the EU and still have the best deal possible for yourself. So it's a fundamentalist interpretation of the result last year to say people voted to leave absolutely everything.
But it's not, though, because you have to maintain freedom of movement of people and labour under the single market rules. You have the so-called four freedoms. If you stay in the customs union as an independent country, you cannot negotiate your own trade deals. So that's not what people voted for, is it?
Well, what are these trade deals? If we can't conduct a trade deal
we're not out
with
yet, are
our
we?
nearest neighbour with an open border, what hope is there? What other countries are we going to have a free trade deal with that would replace the EU? They're just not there.
Well, nobody wants to replace the EU, Colin, do they? Everyone wants a free trade deal with the EU.
But if we can't negotiate one with the EU, what hope have we got for other countries? On freedom of movement, yes, we can have access to the single market and modify the rules on freedom of movement. Norway does this. I mean, there were people on the Brexit side using Norway as an example. What Norway does effectively is to say, well, you can move to Norway if you have a job, and there's a 3-month window either side to look for a job. I think that's a sensible solution and a good compromise when it comes to freedom of movement.
Isn't it funny how nobody on the Remain side of the argument was making that argument in the referendum campaign, though? It's been made post the referendum.
No, the argument was being made by Brexiteers who were saying that Norway was the example that we should look at rather than membership in the EU.
Even leading Remain campaigners, David Cameron, George Osborne, Nick Clegg, all on the record during the referendum campaign saying leaving the EU means leaving the single market. So did Michael Gove, so did Boris Johnson, the leaders of the Leave campaign. But let's move on to Northern Ireland here again, though, because you were saying yesterday that, well, if Northern Ireland can have this deal, so can Wales. But the difference between Wales and Northern Ireland is clearly there is no EU land border between Wales and the EU, and there was a Leave vote in Wales, and you seem to be completely ignoring that.
People didn't vote for a shambles, Iain. They didn't vote for a mess. They didn't vote to see jobs disappear. Look, my preferred solution is to have a solution that works for the whole of the UK, rather than having something different in Northern Ireland or different in Scotland. I think it should be the whole of the UK that has a good deal with the EU. But what we saw yesterday was an attempt to put Northern Ireland in a special bracket without consulting the DUP, it seems, and we all saw what happened. The briefing was that all was fine yesterday, and then it wasn't fine by last night. Look, at the end of the day, what we need is a decent deal for the UK. We've got to leave the EU. That's what people decided to do. But there are ways of doing it well, and there are ways of doing it bad.